It's the real news. I'm Aaron Mate. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has been re-elected in a landslide victory. The vote saw a record turnout of close to 70%. Rouhani represents the moderate and reformist branch of the Iranian establishment, which seeks greater Western engagement. He defeated Ebrahim Raisi, who was close to Iran's ruling clerics. Rouhani oversaw the 2015 nuclear deal and now says he'll focus on Iran rejoining the global economy. Joining me is Ehsan Abdoh Tabrizi, researcher and analyst focused on the Middle East. Ehsan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So as I mentioned, this was a huge turnout, close to 70%. Does this give Rouhani a greater mandate than he had before?
I would say it's made wonders for Rouhani, and it surprised many who didn't thought he would come. And he himself, I don't think, thought that he would have, first of all, such a great challenge. And second of all, he wanted a big mandate like this, and he certainly got it now. But it wasn't something that he actually bargained for at the beginning.
Now, one thing that was unusual was that Rouhani called supporters of his opponent, Raisi, he called them extremists. That seemed different for a presidential campaign in Iran. Am I right on that?
You're definitely right on that. Right now, the main schism, or the main difference, the main factions within the Islamic Republic are two separate ways of thinking more. One side is basically the hardliners or the extremists. What they want is in the international affair, a hawkish, firebrandish, revolutionary policy, if we can call rabble rising like that, and creating problems all over the regions. Of course, contributing to the problems of all over the region, revolutionary. And then they want certain kind of a populism at home, and basically they are not, they don't like, let's say they are anti-good governments in certain aspects. The second kind of a faction that we have right now, which has so many different branches, are basically pragmatists. These are the people who say there is a world outside that we have to engage, and we don't have to and should not challenge them and try to challenge every status quo that we came across, try to be in the Americas face every chance we get. And they want also good governments at home, although both sides have economic corruption to a certain extent. But one side is basically trying to focus into running the country in a normal, peaceful way, while the other one looks to, let's just say, exports its hardcore ideology outside while strengthening it inside the country.
And what does Rouhani's victory over Raisi, who was seen as a protege and a favorite of the ruling clerics, say about the clerics' power? There was some concern before the vote that the supreme leader might even rig the election in favor of his preferred candidate.
I was one of those who was worried about this, certainly after the fiasco of 2009 election. But for a reason that we don't have time to go into, this didn't took place. But Rouhani made a point about this in his last pre-election speech to warn the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, and the Islamic militia, the Basij, about this, asking them politely but firmly not to intervene in the process of election, or let's just say on the counting of the votes of the election. So this was a very serious threat, which fortunately did not come to pass. Now, Raisi is by some media, they have talked of him of a conservative or ultra-conservative. This is not exactly a very good thing. Raisi is a functionary of Iran's deep state. And he has been into, let's say, judicial semi-security position for over 40 years, since he was 19. This man is basically a judicial, or let's say extrajudicial killer in some senses, because he had a considerable role to play in Iran's 1988 massacre of political prisoners. Of course, a lot of time has passed for that, and thankfully in Iran, they cannot do that to political prisoners anymore. But this is quite a grim, notorious reputation. So many people came in to vote just to make sure that such a man, apparently, as you said, the protege of the supreme leader, do not get the helm of the presidency.
So let's talk about what President Rouhani can do with his mandate. The criticism that we hear of Iran is that the powers of the president are limited because the big decisions are ultimately made by the supreme leader. What's your take on that?
Well, that is partially true, but Iran's system and the way the power floats in Iran is very fluid. And let's just say that a determined president with a big popular mandate can be a great thorn in the way of the supreme leader, but he's on a knife edge, basically. What Rouhani can do right now is to open up, and that is what now he is partially committed to, is to make sure that he strengthens the civil society in Iran, and also try, that's inside Iran, also try, he has to in certain way take on the Islamic Revolutionary Guards and the deep state, because in certain level he has had a big fallout with them during this election. Outside Iran, what he can do is quite limited in the foreign policy, but he can have a positive effect, especially with the relations with European countries and countries. He can cool things down. He can make the rhetoric and make the situation less tenser in the diplomacy. While inside Iran, he can actually help bring about more openness and the growth of civil society in Iran, which has been under attack for the past 12 years.
Yeah, so on that point, Rouhani said that he needed a strong mandate to help free the opposition leaders that have been under arrest or house arrest since the Green Movement in 2009. Do you think that will actually happen?
He had a conference today with the press, and he was asked about this, and he was a bit evasive, but he said that he felt that there is an injustice happening there. So what I would interpret that is that he moves slowly but surely to arrange the release of the house arrest that is going on right now of the two main leaders of that movement, Mr. Mir Hossein Mousavi and Mr. Mehdi Karoubi. The question that will he be successful or not is an entirely different matter.
Okay, and finally, Ehsan, let's talk about President Trump's comments. In Saudi Arabia, he singled out Iran as a supporter of terrorism. What is the mood right now among Iranians looking at President Trump, forging a closer alliance with Sunni states like Saudi Arabia, and while saying he'll respect the nuclear deal, making some very bellicose statements about the Iranian government? How should the recent U.S. moves towards Iran be viewed?
Well, as what Iranian thinks about it, the response from Iran is a bit of an outrage, bit of a comic relief, because they say that the Iranians are very good at satire and seeing irony. They say that, oh, Mr. Trump is in Saudi Arabia about democracy. That's a contradiction in terms, basically, or about Iran being a terrorist, while the ideology which has created non-state players like the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda are too close to the ideology of the Saudi Arabian ruling regime. So Iranians are partially outraged, partially amused by this. But what President Rouhani said about it, he tried to brush it off. And that's his main difference with Mr. Raisi on this. Mr. Raisi said that you should be hawkish. You should go and talk with them very heavily, while Mr. Rouhani told them, how do you want to talk with the world? You cannot even talk to your own people. So Mr. Rouhani tried to brush off what President Trump said, by saying that Mr. Trump is new and it will take time for him to make his mind about what his foreign policy can be. So I would say that after so much of a provocative speech Mr. Trump made, Mr. Rouhani very wisely did not made a firebrand respond to that, and that would be helpful.
Ehsan Abdoh Tabrizi, a researcher and analyst focused on the Middle East. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us on The Real News.